In any event, hi everyone. Thanks for taking the time to attend this pre-construction meeting. As you all know, we're going to be talking about 327 Richmond Road, which is located at the northeast corner of Richmond Road and Churchill Avenue, and it extends east to Winona Avenue. As you probably know, the approved site plan will feature a 9-story mixed-use building with ground floor commercial units and 185 dwelling units in the upper stories. There will be 131 parking spaces as well as 212 bike parking spaces. And I should just introduce myself as well. My name is Alice Fife, and I'm a new hire in Councillor Lapier's office, and I'm going to be helping with the planning and development files in the ward going forward as staff, who many of you already know well. We'll be moving on to help Jeff with the citywide planning files that come along with his role as chair of planning committee this term. Fortunately, as you can see, Steph is here too tonight to help with the tech aspect of the meeting, and also just to help me get up to speed on hosting and moderating these meetings. We also have the applicant, CLV Group, and their team here as well. And in terms of tonight and the format for the meeting, CLV and their group will offer a short presentation. And in terms of the material that you can expect to hear about tonight, we're going to talk about things like anticipated start date, timeline information for each stage, such as excavation and pouring, truck traffic routes, construction staging, and any anticipated impacts to sidewalks and roadways, as well as any mitigation measures for blasting. And of course, we're also going to talk about ongoing communication going forward. We'll also talk about who residents can call on site if there are any issues, and how construction updates moving forward will be provided. Then after the presentation, we're going to jump into an open Q&A format where people can ask questions. But before we get started with the presentation, I just want to go over some housekeeping notes. First of all, this presentation will be recorded and posted on the Kitchissippi Ward YouTube channel. And people that can't make it tonight, or if you want to go back and watch the recording, you'll be able to watch it there. And you can let anyone know who doesn't have the link. They can write to our office, or they can just search Kitchissippi Ward on YouTube and you'll be able to find it directly that way. Given that we're a smaller group tonight, we're going to be taking verbal questions, and we would ask that you use the raise hand function on Zoom to indicate that you'd like to ask a question. And just to note as well, anyone who prefer not to ask a question, you can still ask a question using the chat or through the Q&A function. And if you aren't comfortable being recorded on video, please feel free to turn off your camera using the bottom left-hand side of the screen. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to CLV and their team for their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. I guess I'll start off and just introduce the team. My name is Jen Morrison. I'm the Director of Development and Planning at CLV Group. And I have with me Jeff from our office. Jeff, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much, Jen, and thank you, Alice, and thank you, Steph. My name is Jeff Merva, and I'm the Director of Construction for CLV Group, Development Group. And with us today, we also have our construction management company that's going to do the construction for us, and representing Westview Projects is Brad, and also Seth is on the call as well. So I guess what I'll do is I'll get right into this. So just bear with me for a second as I share my screen to show you the presentation. Jen, can you see it?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this evening to listen to our pre-construction presentation and to hear any of our answers to any questions that people may have regarding this project. As Alice said, we'll try to keep this as short as possible and give you as much opportunity to ask questions should you have any. So without any further ado, this is our proposed and approved 327 Richmond Road project. It's being presented or delivered by InterRent REIT and the CLV Group. And I will talk about the project as we go through this. So the project team consists of the owner being InterRent REIT, the developer being CLV Group, the construction management company being Westview Projects, and the architect is Hoban Architects. Tonight, we'll, as we've already done the welcome and the introductions, we're going to show you some renderings of what the final building will look like. We'll briefly touch on the general construction schedule. Because traffic and impact or minimized impact to the community is most important. We'll also talk about the trucking routes. We'll talk about our demolition logistics plan, our mass excavation strategy, our plans for building the structure and what the site logistics will look like over the course of the project. Certainly, we're going to talk in greater detail about traffic control plans, noise and environmental impact and how we will mitigate the impact. And then also we're going to briefly touch on something that we've done before that's been very successful, which is a community outreach communication program over the course of the project, and also then we'll open up the floor for any questions that anybody may have. So the next following slides are going to just give you an idea of what the project looks like from an artist rendering. So this is what the building will look like, as Alice had said, a 9-story building with rooftop amenities. This is the view from the intersection of Richmond and Churchill. This is what the building will look like from both along Winona Avenue and also along Churchill Avenue. That's Churchill looking southward. This is what the building will look like along Richmond, looking from on the left side, looking from west to east, and from on the right side from east to west. As far as schedule is concerned, actually, Jen, can everybody see this? Is this clear to see?
If maybe you can make it a bit bigger. I'm looking on
Okay.
a small screen, but
Okay, let me.
yeah, that's good.
Is that better for everybody? Okay, so these are tentative plans as far as schedule is concerned right now. It still is still to some extent subject to change slightly, but we intend to begin with demolition late summer, early fall this year, which then will quickly follow up with some shoring activities, and then we're going to get into excavation, which will include blasting. And I'll talk to that in greater length further down in the presentation. By the late spring of next year, we'll start getting into building the underground parking substructure, and then moving into the superstructure in the middle of the summer of next year. Quickly followed by the installation of the envelope and the commencement of doing the interiors work. We hope to be finished this project late 2025, early 2026. I'm going to minimize this a little bit because I'm not sure if you can all see this. Okay, so as I alluded to before, we certainly are sensitive and concerned about the impact of these construction activities to the local community and the neighborhood. So we've already begun working with the city traffic management people, and we've got a traffic consultant who is very familiar with the city, and the city enjoys working with them as well. So we've begun to plan out how we're going to approach the site and leave the site in terms of trucking or deliveries or the removal of excavation materials, et cetera. So we've determined the two routes at which we can leave the site, and also the route at which we're going to have deliveries and trucks come to the site. So if I can draw your attention to the blue dotted line, so deliveries will predominantly be coming up Kirkwood to Richmond, and then slightly turning onto Winona, and then delivered right into the site. As trucks or deliveries leave the site, they will either come out of Winona onto Richmond, heading westbound, and then down Churchill to exit away from the site. You'll see later on in some of our pictorial presentation that we will sometimes have a second exit from the site, which will be directly onto Churchill. Being sensitive and considerate of the neighborhood around us, we've also, in consultation with city traffic management, we're proposing that we will exit onto Churchill and have trucks go up to Scott, then down McRae, and eventually down Kirkwood and onto the Queensway. So all of this has been carefully considered to minimize impact in terms of truck or vehicular access to and from the site, that will minimize the impact to the local community. Once again, this is just an image to give you context in terms of where the site is, where we're going to be building this building. We are very much aware of and particularly in consideration and concern for safety, for the neighborhood, for all of those who enjoy this area, but also for our neighbors and our immediate neighbor. So we have construction plans that will take into consideration everybody's safety and continued enjoyment of access as we build this building. So first phase, as I had alluded to before, is going to be site demolition and abatement. As you can see on this image, we have 5 buildings in which we need to demolish. We will, before we do any demolition activities, we are going to first of all put in some temporary fencing to separate the construction and demolition activities from the general public. And of course, once again, we're going to be putting a robust fence between the construction site and 378. All the demolition activities will be in accordance with the Ontario regulations for both abatement and demolition. We will have professionals monitoring the work as we do the abatement and as we do the demolition. We will certainly do all of our work in accordance with city requirements and with the Ontario Health and Safety Act requirements. While we're doing this demolition work, on some occasions we may have to redirect pedestrian traffic from the sidewalks for their safety as we do some of the demolition that are close to the property line and very close to the sidewalk. But these will be very short inconveniences, and we will redirect pedestrian traffic to the other side of the street. As we're doing demolition, we will use water in order to maintain or mitigate and reduce any dust generated during these demolition activities. There's another image of what to expect during the demolition phase. Once again, we'll have perimeter fence that will go up around the entire perimeter of the site, including in between us and 378. Our truck entrance will be through gate number 1, which is located on Winona Street, just a little bit north of the intersection of Richmond and Winona. And as previous stated, we may on some occasions need to redirect pedestrian traffic in order to ensure public safety, as we're removing some of the structures that are close to the property line. Soon after we're completed the demolition, we're going to get into preparing for the excavation of the site. So what you'll see during this time, and once again, this will be in about mid-fall, you'll see some equipment on site behind the fencing, because this temporary fencing will continue to be in place in order to protect the public and separate the public from any construction activities. But you'll see behind the fencing, there will be some fairly large equipment that will be installing shoring and doing some preliminary excavation work. During that time, the sidewalks shall remain open, and there will be minimal impact to the community, with the exception of the occasional truck coming and going from the site using the truck routes that we had previously indicated. Then we will get into the mass excavation. We will be digging down for 2 levels of underground parking. That will include doing blasting. We will be in communication at either the end of the week, this week, or next week. We will be sending around letters to each and every one of the neighbors within 75 meters radius of the site to communicate with you, to begin the process of getting a pre-construction survey done, and also to do other communications with you to make arrangements to enable us to do what we have to do as far as this project is concerned. The pre-construction survey will be done by a third-party consultant, and we will, in our communication with you, we'll give you contact information, and we'll be able to communicate with you to address any concerns that you may have. The excavation work, including the blasting, will be done by a competent contractor that is experienced in doing this work, and it will be in accordance with the Ontario blasting regulations. We will, as required, we will be setting up vibration monitoring devices within the radius of the site, and these devices will be in constant communication with the consultant and also with the site should there be any exceedances, which we don't expect to happen. We have, once again, as part of our communication that we're going to send out to you either the end of this week or next week, there is a communication plan that we've set up to maintain a constant communication with you or enable you to be able to reach us should you have any concerns. The trucking for the mass excavation will be as per the trucking route that we had indicated before. It will begin with trucks coming out of Winona, and then eventually we will also be exiting out of the Churchill side of the project. But we have some images later on to show you more. I see there's a chat comment there. Yes, somebody asked the question, will the pre-construction survey include the commercial properties? The answer is yes. It'll include all the properties within the 75-meter radius. What else? So all traffic controls will be set up and submitted to the City of Ottawa traffic officials for review, and permits will be issued on an as-needed basis. we've already begun, but we will continue and we will get the necessary approvals, and we will comply with the City of Ottawa traffic management requirements throughout the course of the excavation and the entire course of the project. So this is the first phase of our excavation. We will start on the east side of the site. We will have installed previously using the large equipment that I'd shown you in one of the earlier images. We will have installed the perimeter shoring that will support the excavation and support all the sidewalks and the perimeter of the property as we begin to dig down to the underground parking levels. Once again, the site will be totally enclosed around the perimeter with fencing in order to maintain public safety. We will also be setting up our job trailers or site offices on raised scaffolding that will be positioned over the sidewalk on Winona in accordance with the requirements and the approval from City of Ottawa. And then as we progress to the next phase, as we move our excavation from east to west, as you can see on this image, we're going to have a secondary ramp out of the excavated area, and that will enable trucks to exit out onto Churchill and follow the routes that we had previously described on the earlier sites, on the earlier slide, I should say. As you can see, there's these dashed lines that show the trucking routes that we had previously indicated on the earlier slide, and emphasis once again on the perimeter fencing, including a robust fence that will separate our site from the properties to the north. During this excavation, the sidewalks will be open for pedestrian traffic. After we've completed the excavation, then we will begin with putting a tower crane into the middle of the excavation. And so during that time, it may require that we have to apply to the city and get city permission to temporarily close down a street for a day or maybe a day and a half in order to enable us to erect the crane. You can see on the left image that this is where the crane would be located, and the perimeter fencing and what the property will look like, or the perimeter of the property would look like during the time that we begin to build the concrete structure. Once again, we will be reaching out and communicating with any of the neighbors that perhaps will be influenced by the crane, and that will be part of our communication that will either go out later this week or early next week, and we'll begin the dialogue that we have that will be perhaps necessary. I have a comment here in chat. Do you have a sense of which street would be closed for the crane installation? No, we have not gotten to that. We have not determined that at the moment yet, but we will certainly be in communication and giving you advance notice as we develop our plans. You'll see later on in the presentation that we have a somewhat innovative way of maintaining constant communication and giving you advance notice and an opportunity to discuss what our future plans are. It's something that we'll talk about later on in this presentation. In the right slide or the right image, you can see that we will be taking up the sidewalk on Winona and a portion of the parking lane on Winona, but at all times we will always maintain two-way traffic on Winona while we're building this building. And I hope that you can see that we've illustrated that in this image. We're working closely with City of Ottawa Traffic Management to make sure that everything meets their requirements and is to always in consideration of public safety. So early in the project, before we actually get to grade as we're building the underground parking, we will have the crane, and we will have concrete trucks, ready mix concrete trucks parked, delivering concrete on the sidewalk and the very westernmost side of Winona. And there will be a placing boom, which is a mobile vehicle that will actually help place the concrete. And this will only be as we're building the underground parking levels, which will take approximately 2 months to do. And once again, all of this will be around late spring, early summer next year. Once we get to get the underground to ground floor level, then we won't be using a placing boom, a mobile placing boom. We'll be using a in-place structure that is a temporary type of structure called a inbound placing boom. During that time, we will be using less of Winona and have the concrete trucks backing more onto our property as they discharge the concrete to be placed around the perimeter or throughout the site. Around the perimeter of the project, at this point in time, we will erect overhead protection on the sidewalks so that, once again, with the utmost importance is for public safety. So as we start to build up above grade, we will have overhead protection on all the sidewalks that will be illuminated at night so that pedestrians can feel safe, to ensure that nothing can fall onto public property that would cause harm. In the left image, once again, you can still see that we're leaving lanes for north-south traffic. In the right image, it's just a different perspective or point of view to show how we will be delivering concrete to the site as the building gets built. Then as we get up to past 4 or 5 floors, we're going to be installing a temporary construction man material hoist. It's like an exterior elevator that'll be located on the back side of the building, always maintaining that we have a robust separation between the construction site and 378 Winona. As we get closer to completing the building, we will be taking down the overhead protection and the hoarding associated with that around the perimeter of the site. And we'll be putting up some temporary fencing once again, similar to what we have during the demolition and the excavation. And that will enable us to be able to move the fence in and out as we begin to build the new landscaping and streetscape around the perimeter of the building as we're completing the building. This work will begin to happen once we've actually taken down the crane, and there's less risk to any of the public around the perimeter of the site. So perhaps I'll zoom this in a bit here. So from a bird's eye view, this is effectively what the construction site will consist of. You see the perimeter, the hashed perimeter overhead protection on the sidewalks, and we've got the construction crane and the radius of its boom. And once again, we will be talking with all the neighbors that could be under the influence of that radius. We have the 2 gates in and out of the site, which is gate number 1 on Winona and gate number 2, which is on Churchill. Once the building is built, then we're going to have some laydown area that's on the ground floor level within the confines of our construction site. And we've also indicated here in teal the color of the man material hoist. Once again, this construction will our target is to have this construction completed by the end of 2025, early 2026. I'll zoom out again a bit. So we've engaged a traffic consultant who is very familiar and works very well with the city in terms of traffic management. And we've already begun to prepare the traffic management plans. And there's many detailed plans, but we're giving you kind of a snapshot of what these things will look like in terms of the signage and the redirection of traffic depending on what the activities are. And this is in constant consultation with the city traffic management, and also it will be subject to permitting from the city traffic management. So these are early designs and the development of what we believe to be what the city is going to require from us. We've already gotten comments back from the city in a couple of rounds or iterations, but we wanted to share with you that we, one, first and foremost, are being sensitive to minimizing the impact to the community. Two, having safety as the utmost importance to us, particularly for the residents and anybody who enjoys this area. And three, being compliant and trying to mitigate the impact to the community and to traffic around this site during the course of the different phases of this project. While we're doing form work, we may at some points need to close a parking lane or something. And of course, we're going to use traffic control or paid duty officers, police officers, while we're doing some of these traffic redirections. Once again, all of this is at the direction and in compliance with the City of Ottawa traffic management requirements. These are more images to show the different phases, and in particular, the impact that that will have to Churchill in terms of parking lane or the occasional sidewalk closure, depending on what the activity is happening. As far as noise and environmental impact, we're going to do all our work. We'll always be in compliance and following the City of Ottawa noise bylaws. We'll work with the city traffic and bylaw officials to ensure that this project is compliant and all of our activities are compliant at all times. Highlighted in yellow here is an excerpt from the city noise bylaw. In case anybody is not aware, the bylaw says that we can do construction activities Monday to Saturday from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. And on Sundays and statutory holidays, we can do construction activities between 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. We have no intention of exceeding outside of these times, both during the week or even on weekends. And certainly we will be in compliance with noise bylaw regulations. And if we do need to exceed then any of these times, which at the moment we don't have that intention, but if something does come up, then we know and we will comply with the requirement that we need to apply in advance to the city, to the Director of Bylaw Services for an exemption should we need it. We will, for the most part, throughout the course of the project, we will try to limit our work to during the week and try to avoid weekend work. And certainly during the week, we will try to avoid working after 6 p.m. The only time that we may, in fact, go beyond that is sometimes when we're doing concrete pours. Unfortunately, depending on weather, it may mean that we end up encroaching later into the evening after 6 p.m., but that is certainly what we're going to try to avoid, but sometimes beyond 6 p.m. cannot be avoided. As far as dust mitigation is concerned, we're going to monitor dust on the site on a daily basis. We will use water to reduce dust during the multiple phases of construction. And of course, we're going to have a silt fence or material on our perimeter fencing in order to prevent dust from migrating out from the site. And we'll also be monitoring and cleaning the street around the perimeter of the site and the sidewalks. Should any of our construction activities bring out dirt onto the streets, then we'll clean that up on an as-needed basis. As we mentioned earlier, we will be doing pre-construction surveys for all properties within the 75-meter radius, and we will use third-party consultants who are experienced in doing this to carry out this work. It would be for ideally interior and exterior pre-construction surveys, but it will be at each property owner's discretion if they will want or allow an interior survey to be done, and we will discuss that with each and every one of you. As I mentioned, we'll begin the initial contact through a newsletter or a letter that we will send to you either this week or early next week. As mentioned previously, we're going to have vibration monitors installed as required by the regulations at the neighboring buildings within the 75-meter radius, and that will provide any real-time information with regards to if any of the ground vibration comes close to or exceeds the Ontario regulations, and certainly there'd be constant communication with both the consultant and the site to advise us of if we're getting close to or have any exceedances. In addition, what we'd like to do is we would like to have a bi-monthly liaison meeting with members of the community and the BIA to, one, have an opportunity to have a face-to-face dialogue on a regular basis throughout the course of the project. Two, to communicate with you what our future activities will be over the next 2 months, and to get any feedback or hear any concerns that anybody may have. And hopefully we will be able to respond to them and if necessary, perhaps alter our intended plans to therefore mitigate or minimize any inconvenience that our activities would have. And three, to have an opportunity to discuss any concerns that any of the neighbors have had over the course of the project to date, and for us to have the ability to have dialogue to address any of those concerns. I believe that the counselor's office has agreed that they will participate in these sessions, and we find that this is a very successful means of which to maintain constant communication with the neighbors to address any concerns and to give to be proactive and to give communication in terms of what's to be expected ahead over the next couple of months. We look forward to doing this with you, and we will begin our first sessions in advance of any construction or demolition activities. Lastly, we're also going to we will be posting on the exterior of the site. We'll be posting communication contact information should anybody have any concerns or issues. And lastly, I just want to say on behalf of CLV and InterRent, we are very grateful that we have this opportunity to add to Westboro and to create a what will be hopefully a wonderful addition to the community. And we certainly don't want to do anything that will cause any inconvenience or any great inconvenience to anybody, and we'll try to get this project completed as quickly as possible. That said, we're open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Jeff. That was very informative and super helpful. Not seeing any hands up yet. I'll just give it a moment. Oh, there's Judy. Hi, Judy. Want to go ahead?
Thank you, Jeff. That was really helpful. For those of you that don't know, I'm Judy Lincoln. I'm the executive director of the Westboro Village BIA. And I just have sort of one question, because I know you're not finalized the traffic management plan yet. But something I would like to flag is we have a heavily used loading zone on Winston, or not Winston, on Winona. Sorry, there's another project happening on Winston and Winona together. I apologize in advance now. So there's a heavily used loading zone on Winona, and it's like the bakery truck bringing 50-kilo bags of sugar to Cupcake Lounge type thing. And so I would just flag that for the traffic consultant, because if you're going to be using part of the lane on Winona, then that loading zone wouldn't be able to be maintained there, but we would need one nearby. We do our best as businesses to not anger the delivery guys who are bringing in giant bags of sugar and flour, and make it relatively easy for them to be close to the business. So that would just sort of be the one issue I flagged, because that's definitely going to be an issue there. And if you
may I comment on that?
Yeah.
So yes, certainly. So we have already begun to consider that, and
Okay.
we've begun in our discussions with traffic management over at the city. We're exploring options in order to find a solution during the course of the project that will minimize any negative impact for those businesses and their activities.
Yeah, it's a tight neighborhood, so I know it's always a challenge finding these, and we've worked on other ones and managed to eke out solutions, so I know something will come up. And then if you're setting out notices for the pre-construction survey, if you have a copy of that, I'm happy to include it in our newsletter. We send a newsletter to all 300 business members, so tenants and property owners, every Friday.
Okay,
That way it will go out, and it can go, both the property owners can see it and the tenants. And if you want it just to go to property owners, we can do that as well.
Okay, we'll take that into consideration. And our project manager, development manager, unfortunately couldn't make it today, but I certainly, or Jen will pass that on to her, and you'll probably hear from Josie. Alice, do you see there's something in the chat?
Let's see. Oh, I just want to mention, just if anyone missed the beginning of the meeting, and if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. Or if you don't want to chat or verbally communicate them, you can submit them in the chat. We're going to be keeping a speaking order for everyone. And of course, if you do have a few questions, we just ask that everyone be mindful of anyone else that may have their hand up and wish to ask a question.
My apologies, Judy. Was there anything else that you wanted to ask or share? Okay.
Anyone else?
If we'd like some questions, perhaps anyone would like questions to percolate to, Judy, I think you had a few questions ahead of time. So if you'd like, I'm happy to go to those. I have sort of a matter I think might be good to flag as well. And maybe I'll just open with that, Jeff. So obviously, it's great to hear you being sensitive to Winona and sort of the streetscape, but we'd still just sort of flag, as you know, there's the construction project happening at the bottom of Winona at Scott. I'm sure there might be some residents here who are aware of it too. They have a bit of an extended closure at the end of the street as well. There's pedestrian traffic going through and bike, but not really car traffic. I'd just be aware that, it's obviously hard to coordinate with that site, but, and not that you might be able to, but just to be aware that if there's closures happening on Winona ever at any point, hopefully that's not the case and you can keep the lane shift. It would present a problem, obviously, to everyone bound between those two ends being pushed Whitby, essentially. So I'm sure you have that in mind, but nonetheless.
We do, and once again, in our frequent communication with traffic management considers all the activities that happen around the Westboro area, and so as we were developing our truck routes, there was consideration of all the other activities, all the other projects that are going on, including consideration of the hydro work that'll happen on Richmond. So certainly what we do is we are always in consideration of what is happening around us, and our plans will always be to not only mitigate the impact to the community. For example, that's why we were emphasizing that we want to have, and we will always strive and ensure that we do have two-directional traffic on Winona over the course of this project. Now, we may and as we alluded to, we may at one point need to do a road closure to perhaps put up a crane or take down a crane, but these will be just very short in consideration of the duration of the project, a short inconvenience, and we will schedule that. We will also be communicating this through our liaison meetings well in advance of what we're considering to do in consultation with traffic management as well. So everything that we do is going to be in consideration of all the different activities that are happening in the neighborhood.
Of course, that's great to hear in that case, but of course, we understand, things can happen. I think hearing that there's the opportunity for the communication is always good. And of course, if anyone has any questions on sort of those types of things, feel free to ask them. Judy, I see you have your hand up, so
I feel like I go to so many of these meetings. I'm getting used to all the questions and what to ask. But this question is more for you, Steph and Alice, is with this project and the Azure project happening at the other end of Winona, is that going to impact the city's integrated infrastructure renewal project that they had scheduled started for next year on Winona and Picton, and the other A street I can't remember, Ashton?
Alice, I can try and poke in, though I don't know the extent of it. So I don't think the city wants to. This is what our understanding's been so far. This actually tends to be a Ben file in our office, but Ben has said that it looks like the city would like to not delay it another year, but we don't have. I don't believe we have the full confirmation of when that consultation, everything will happen yet. But I think it's a good question to bring up to him again and see where that's at, because of course between the project at the end, the entire street renewal, and then of course bookended on the other side as well. Alice, I don't know if you've heard anything more recent though, so I'll defer just in case.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything to add to that.
All right, I will take off. I will leave it for now.
Okay. Any other questions?
I believe Tim maybe had his hand up at one point.
Hi. So Steph was talking about the construction at the other end of Winona, and I was at that pre-construction meeting, and they said exactly what you said tonight, that they would never shut down Winona at all. And so what happened was they realized that their concrete pump needed to take up most of the street. So then everything changed. So then the city just let them close the street. So I'm looking at your site, which is the same size as their site, and I cannot figure out any way that you're going to be able to keep Winona open 2 lanes at all times. It's not going to work, because I know the size of because of that project, I know the exact size that the legs of a concrete pump big enough to spread concrete to the far side of the excavation has to be, and it will not fit on Winona without closing the street, period.
All right, well, I cannot speak to the other project. I don't know the details about that project. It's unfortunate that Winona got closed off entirely, but I assure you that we have looked at this in great detail already, and we've mapped it out. What you see is just very high level preliminary images and to illustrate what we're thinking about. But we have done this many, many times before. Westview projects are very experienced construction managers who have built buildings, many buildings like this, and they've already carefully thought this through. So once again, we will be having these liaison meetings every 2 months, and we will be communicating in advance and showing and demonstrating how we will be executing the work. So as the project goes along, we will be demonstrating to you before it even happens on site what to expect. So I once again, I can't comment how that happened on the other project, but we're confident in our plans.
Okay, so you're saying right now you are 100% sure that you will keep two-way traffic on Winona, except for the when you have to put your crane in and occasionally. We won't have a situation like we have at the other end of Winona.
Once again, I do not know exactly what the situation is.
You don't
on
need
Winona,
to know. All you
will
need to know is are you confident, 100% confident in the plan that you're putting forth tonight?
Based on what we know, yes.
Okay. The other question I have is, where is your laydown area? Because that's the other issue that they had at the other end. They didn't have a laydown area, and they had to use the street to lay their forms and all the stuff, everything on the street, because there was just this mass excavation, which is very similar to what you're doing. So they needed the street to pile up all their stuff. So that's why I'm a little gun shy here.
Of course you would be. And so, as I said before, Westview Projects is very experienced in doing this. We've identified internally on our site property where we are going to lay down not only formwork, but materials such as reinforcing steel, etc. We're not doing laydown on city property.
Right.
I can't speak to the other project.
Yeah, I know. I'm not asking you to speak to them. All I'm saying is this is what happened down there. And I can tell you, I was at that meeting and they said the exact same things that you were saying. We've got all this experience and we worked on tight sites, and that's what they say. So like I say, I'm just a little gun shy.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
Let us show you over the course of the project.
Okay, good. Just can I continue to ask questions, Alice? One of the things, if there's somebody else that wants to ask a question, cut me off.
Here, Tim, I think Alice is just taking a second to unmute. I do think she wanted to say something.
Sorry, thanks, Steph.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, Tim, I'm just gonna raise a question and then we can go back to you if there are no other hands up. One question is, where will the construction workers park? The community is already seeing pressure with other projects in the area along Scott Street, and we're expecting more workers to be in the area with the hydro work coming up too. Has there been any thought and planning to that?
Yes, there has. So one of the things that we've already talked with Westview Projects is we're going to put a requirement within our contracts that one, we encourage each of the trade contractors to use the public transit system to get to and from the site. Should they feel that they any of their people need to drive to the site, we're also going to be putting in our contract that we require them to not park within the vicinity of the project site, and to use parking, the public parking areas that may be within the neighborhood, and that to comply with and abide and respect the parking bylaws. But unfortunately, we have very little control as to what can or does happen off-site, off our property. But our intention is to at least put within the contracts and to communicate in advance to all the trades and make it part of our contracts that we do not want to have lots of vehicular traffic in and around our site.
Thank you. Just going to see if there are any other questions. Otherwise, Tim, we'll get back to you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up or questions in the chat. So go ahead, Tim, if you have another question.
Yeah, so I've been working with Gail, who is in the house right beside the site there.
378, yes.
Yeah, we've been talking back and forth. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is, you know, the green, like sound dampener pads? You don't know what they are? You see them all over. So your construction fence goes up. It's usually that metal fencing, and then there's this green pad that they affix to the fence.
Brad
Like,
or Seth, I'm going to ask you to help me on
like
this
it's
because I'm
all
not
over
familiar with that.
for the phase 2 construction of the LRT. It's everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. It's certainly used a lot in traffic areas. And obviously if you drive down any of these roads where the LRT is, you see it everywhere. My understanding is your question is, can we install those adjacent to Gail's property? Is that correct?
Yeah, at least on that side, you know, where she is, particularly, you know, when you're doing the, you know, I don't know if they're sheet piling or, you know, what kind of piling you're doing. But, you know, they had an incident, you know, up at the other end of a Kitchissippi at the school there, you know, and it really started a real schmozzle, right? And she, you know, when I was talking with Gail, that's kind of one of the things she was kind of concerned about, as, you know, noise. If there's some way to kind of, you know,
sure. Understood. I mean, you know, ultimately those are sound dampening. They're certainly not soundproof.
Yeah.
And we're, you know, we're more than willing to sort of have that discussion with CLV. It's, you know, along, you know, adjacent to that property.
Yeah, Tim, thank you very much for that suggestion, and certainly we'll take that up with Westview Projects, and we'll also discuss it with Gail as we talk about many things, because we're going to be very sensitive to the fact that she's right next to our development.
Okay, so one more question. Sorry.
By all means.
Gail, so the site is contaminated, right? And Gail she needs to, and for myself, I guess, she wants to understand, you know, the precautions that, you know, specifically you're going to take to try and, you know, any contaminant or whatever. You know, I know you said, oh, you're gonna follow the rules. Well, Gail doesn't, and even I don't know what those rules are. So she just needs a bit more understanding of what kinds of things you're going to be doing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But it's not, you know, while Gail is right next to the site, we're going to be open and transparent through these community, through these liaison meetings to detail what we are going to do before we do in terms of abatement, demolition, excavation, the excavation of contaminated soils and the removal and disposal of them and the control of all of that during the course of the activities. And not only will we be compliant with the regulations, and there are many different regulations depending on what the materials or the contaminants are, but in many cases we will exceed, because we want to be good neighbors and we want to do things efficiently and effectively and minimizing risk, not only to us, the project, but also to the community, with safety being number one priority.
Thank you,
Great.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, just scrolling through here. I don't see any other hands up, but we'll give it a minute and see if anything comes up in the chat. Well, if there aren't any other questions, just looking at the time, we're just at 8 o'clock. So
Alice,
yes, Steph.
could I ask a last sort of two questions, and then hopefully if anyone else thinks of anything, I'll cede the floor, of course.
Yeah.
So maybe just to clarify on Kim's question a bit, Jeff, is the intention more so in that sort of that next liaison meeting, maybe when you do have more details, I don't know what the case might be, you might be clarifying kind of what sort of abatement and contamination concerns there are, or just, it sounded like perhaps it's more of a question for after. I don't know what sort of the case was there, so I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, so during, how do I say this? Certainly before we start any activities, and so even before we even start this project, we'd like to start to have these community liaison sessions. And in them, we will be forecasting or telling in advance, this is the next step. These are the steps that we're going to be taking. This is what you could expect to see happening. And at the beginning, for example, when we're talking about we're going to be doing demolition, we will talk in greater length about how do we do abatement? How do we control the abatement process? And what are the measures that we will implement that will not only meet but exceed the requirements as stipulated by the Ontario regulations. The same thing will apply for demolition. The same thing will apply for the excavation of contaminated soils and the disposal, and how we will remove it from the site and transport it. Where will we be disposing it, and how do we have third-party controls and measures to ensure that everything is being done in accordance with the provincial regulations. So we will explain in detail as we progress through the project, through these sessions, what the neighbors can expect, and also to put their minds at ease in terms of what the activities will be and how do we ensure that we're protecting public safety.
Thanks for the clarification. And it's also a bit of a good segue talking about the community meetings, but just realizing, people here might be wondering how to get involved and what the details are. My proposal would be, and I think Alice and I will be able to work on this together, seeing as we are a small group tonight, and it's a small sort of immediate neighbor sort of block. But anyone who might be listening to this and interested in perhaps tuning in for those meetings, being aware of them and when they're happening, I would invite to write our office directly, and then we can kind of keep an ongoing list of that. Of course, if anyone reaches out to you folks directly, we can propose going that way. we have to figure out the details, but
Yes, Steph.
I don't want to leave everyone hanging here.
Steph and Alice, we want to begin to discuss. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We
No,
want
go ahead.
to begin to discuss with you how this can be structured. What dates would be the best dates that are most effective for everybody involved, and we want to plan out when these sessions are. And we've done this many times before with great success. And we can share some of our learnings with you as we develop the plan going forward as far as these liaison committees.
Awesome. That sounds good. It makes sense taking place after this. So I'll just sort of say it aloud, and then I'll sort of have done my piece here. But anyone who might be interested tonight, feel free to write us at jeff.leeper@ottawa.ca. I'm sure many might be familiar with the email, but in case you're not, jeff.leiper@ottawa.ca. So that's it for me. I will leave it to anyone else who has questions, and for Alice to do our wonderful closing remarks.
Okay, thanks, Steph, and thanks, Jeff. So I'm not seeing any more hands or any questions in the chat. So I am going to wrap it up, and I'd like to say thank you to Jeff and the CLV team for their presentation tonight. And of course, thanks to all the residents and business owners that took the time to attend as well. And if anyone does have any questions that pop up after the meeting, please feel free to just email our office at the jeff.leapier@ottawa.ca address. And also just another reminder that we will have the recording up on the Kitchissippi Ward YouTube site the next day or two. And if anyone has trouble finding that link, just please reach out to us and we'll happily share it. So with that, I'd like to say good night and thanks again to everyone attending. Thanks so much. Good night.
Thank you all.
Okay, all right.